Welcome to the War Room. I'm Tom Pappert here, co-hosting with Savannah Hernandez. Our guest is the very impressive Dr. Steve Pieczenik. Dr. Steve Pieczenik is, of course, an expert on the world events that are happening right now, particularly, among many others, the coronavirus that is spreading, it seems like, wildfire. So, Dr. Pieczenik, you were obviously on the Alex Jones Show earlier today. Can you give us an outline of where you see this going over the next few coming days? Folks are very concerned. They're buying storable food. The nation is seeing a run on gas masks or masks that will prevent a viral infection. Where do you see this taking us in the next few days and coming weeks?
Well, number one, we can't panic, Tom and Savannah. It's something, it occurs. It's not as deadly as everybody thinks. The Chinese have done as well as they could, but the virus will go out. It's a certain type of virus. Is not as lethal as Ebola. It's not as lethal as SARS. As a matter of fact, as I said on the other show, I had it about a month and a half ago. I took antibiotics and it went away. The key point right here is to understand that if you're in a good shape, you're in good, physical and mental condition, I think that's a good start. The key to this, to the virus and the containment, is really where I got the problem was in dealing with students at a university. And what we have to do is to really check the Chinese students and faculty at the universities around the United States. I'm not as worried about the influx of visitors as I am the repository of students already who come from Asia, either Vietnam, Thailand, Myanmar, and can harbor that virus. It doesn't mean you have to sequester them. It simply means that we have within our population a collective entity of people who may or may not have coronavirus. But remember, the coronavirus has a degree of lethality. It can be from mild to lethal depending on your own immune system. As Alex has said before, if you're not in good shape, you're highly vulnerable to it. But even if you're older and you're in good shape, I wouldn't be as concerned as everybody makes it out to be. We will not have a vaccine for another year. I think the NIH is doing the best they can, but a lot of this can also be treated by antibiotics, which I did. And I treated myself with quite a few thousand milligrams of antibiotics. So it converts to what we will call a mycoplasma or PPO, intermediate type of entity, which creates what we call a walking pneumonia, which means you don't necessarily see it on the X-ray and you don't necessarily spit it out on the sputum, but it is treatable. And it's not just a virus. It does mutate into a position where you can handle it with mild antibiotics. That's from a professional who got sick and got better. So you're looking at them.
So you brought up something very vital there, and that's we've got Chinese students in the country. We have Chinese faculty in the country. And again, the goal, I don't think, is to necessarily deport these people, but at least to understand where they are and what they do. There was a report out today that a Harvard chemical biology scientist was arrested for receiving over $2 million from a Chinese Wuhan university. Do you think that this poses risk to the United States? Do you think that having these people in our country and working with China, does that pose any threat?
No. What it really underscores is what I've said about Harvard and MIT and the elite universities that I went to. They lie. They're a business. The gentleman who was arrested should have been arrested because he lied to FBI officials about the fact that he had received over $150,000 per year, plus $1 million, plus stipends, plus he had a laboratory in China, in Wuhan, for $1.5 million. And this is the kind of chicanery that goes on in our university systems, particularly Harvard. I had pointed that out months ago on the Alex Jones Show when they received bribes from Mohammed bin Salman. I pointed out about MIT. You will see professors at MIT who have that conflict of interest and have lied. Is it a national security problem? No. It is more of a desecration of what the institutions means. The MITs, the Harvards, the Cornells, the Browns of yesteryear are no longer like that. They're basically money machines that charge a lot of money to go to school. There are a lot of Chinese students who happen to be good, and they pay a lot of money to come to these schools. As a matter of fact, there are prep schools in China, including one public one that I traded on, EDU, which prepares the Chinese students to come to America. And in turn, these universities want nothing more than money. They're not interested in quality, despite what they say. So I am not surprised Dr. Lieber was arrested. I'm surprised there will be other doctors who will be arrested, both at MIT, Harvard, and other elite universities.
Dr.
But they're not.
And if I may ask the question as well.
Sure.
So you had mentioned national security, and many people are saying that we need to close our borders to Chinese. We see North Korea cancel flights from China. Germany has also confirmed their first case of coronavirus. Mongolia also closed their border. Do you think that we should close our border to Chinese citizens? Also, what do you think about, U.S. delegates or U.S. citizens from Wuhan being brought back here?
Well, number one, I wouldn't bring him back here. Number two, it's not an issue of closing the borders. What I want to see Trump do, and I had to, as I said before on the Alex Jones show, years ago, I had to mobilize the military, our military, in order to stop an Ebola epidemic from Africa to here. What I want Trump to do is to appoint a Surgeon General who in turn has public health services, who in turn will deal with the epidemic as they should, which is to stop all citizens coming in from China and any Chinese citizens who may have the disease, to put them in quarantine or hospitalize them, as we would normally do in an epidemic. It's not a national security problem as much as it is thinking out of the box, or in my business, it's thinking within the box. And unfortunately, I haven't seen a doctor come to the forefront other than myself and say, look, I've treated it, I've been infected with it, I got better, and now let's get our act together. And I have not seen a Surgeon General, I have not seen the Public Health Service, I haven't seen Trump say anything in the White House other than the fact that he's playing around with Bibi Netanyahu, who's been indicted 3 times, really doesn't deserve our attention. And we have better things to do, because the impeachment is wasting our time and money, and we have to focus on an epidemic that may or may not be more serious. But for the most part, I would not panic. I would deal with this as any public health service officer should deal with it.
So we've only got about a minute and a half left in this segment. Hopefully you'll stay with us for a few more. But what do you think of China? I mean, President Trump was thanking President Xi Jinping and saying you're doing a wonderful job. Is that accurate? Can we trust what they're saying?
We, in the business of national security, we don't trust. We control. There's an old concept by Brzezinski, the father of the KGB. Trust is good, but control is better. Xi did what he could do. The system is not perfect. Even within the communist system, he knows he could not contain that virus. And so there are people in China who are upset. But you have to remember that in China, we're talking about 1.3 billion people and half the size of America. 500 million of the Chinese have no access to real water. They have access to the Yalu and the Yangtze River. So I'm not going to criticize Xi at this point, where he has literally said there is an epidemic. We have now contained 30 cities. They're doing the best that they can. But by nature, you're talking about 19 million people in Wuhan. The whole issue was that China did admit it went from an animal, spread onto the individual, and went from individual to individual.
And Dr. Pechenik, we have 30 seconds left, so I do want you to finish that up on the other side of this short break. Before we do go, I want to give out the phone number for people to call in. It's going to be 877-789-2539. So we're going to be taking callers throughout the day about the coronavirus, about the impeachment. I'll be joined by Tom Papper and Dr. Steve Pechenik on the other side of this short break, where we'll be discussing more in depth about the coronavirus and the spread of it. Welcome back to the War Room. My name is Savannah Hernandez. I am sitting in studio where I am co-hosting with Tom Papper. We are joined by our amazing guest, Dr. Steve Pieczenik. He's talking to us about the coronavirus. It's something that he actually contracted himself. So he's been talking to us about whether or not Americans should be panicking about the spread of this virus. But before we get back to Dr. Pieczenik and his take on the coronavirus, I do want to give out the phone number. It is 877-789-2539, 877-789-2539. We would love to hear from the callers today about the coronavirus, their take on the impeachment of President Trump, and all of the other big things that have been in the news. President Trump is having a rally tonight in Wildwood, New Jersey. As always, thousands of people already camping out, or did camp out overnight and are already waiting there and attending that rally. But Dr. Steve Pieczenik, you were telling us that you contracted the coronavirus yourself, actually. So talk to us about that. How did you contract the virus, and what did you do to cure it?
Well, I'm a physician. I'm a board examiner, not only board certified. So what I do is I contracted about a month and a half ago. At that time, it didn't matter whether it's called coronavirus or mycoplasma pneumonia. Basically, when I get that, I take antibiotics and fluid. I didn't need a chest x-ray because it's not going to show on a chest x-ray. It's what we call walking pneumonia or atypical mycoplasma pneumonia. Certain doctors know what that is, and it is susceptible to antibiotics. And at the dose that I gave, 2,000 to 3,000 milligrams, which is a lot over a week, I got better. And the symptoms were the same as it was described: fever, coughing, wheezing, and eventually it does go away. It is amenable to antibiotics. You're not going to grow it out, and you're not going to see it on the x-ray. So those clinicians who are my age, 60 and above, know clinically what I'm talking about. For the most part, I would not worry in the United States. We have a pretty good system of health. You don't have to run out and get masks and all. Basically, you have to be in pretty good shape, and I wouldn't worry about it because it's this flu season. It is a season where we normally get all kinds of flu. Coronavirus happens to be one of it. It sounds more deadly than the others, but it's not the Ebola. What I would like to see is the designation of a Surgeon General and the Public Health Service, and we have to just limit the ingress or the egress as well of Asian students that are coming in. I would not bring them in right now, and at the same time, I would monitor my Asian students on the different universities that are out there. Harvard, you talked about Dr. Lieber. Yeah, Dr. Lieber committed a fraud because he had a lab in China. Probably a lot of our scientists have that same kind of situation where they get money from the Chinese. Ironically, he had a lab in Wuhan, and he lied. And I think that's going to be true of a lot of our academics at Harvard, MIT, Cornell, all the places I went to. I'm not a great fan of academia now. It's nothing more than a business which lies and is basically corrupt. The presidents of these institutions like Fried and Raphael Fried of MIT and Beckow of Harvard, they take money from Mohammed bin Salman. They take money from Epstein. And when you told me about the Bill Gates Institute, I mean, what are you going to talk about? A man who spent time with Bill Gates, spent a lot of time, and then afterwards says, I deny it. I mean, you know, the guy's a pathological liar. And the Gates Foundation is nothing more than a fancy way for them not to pay taxes. So let's not make them more important than they are. They're basically congenital sociopaths who made money. Gates never really did it on his own. He forgot to tell everybody that 30 years ago, when nobody had any money, he was given $1 million by his father, who was a major lawyer in the United States, and $1 million at that time was the equivalent of about 20 to 30 million now. So there's nothing great about Gates other than his self-aggrandizement. Have we answered that?
So Dr. Pieczenik,
yes,
yeah, I think so. So, Dr. Pieczenik, you mentioned several times, why isn't Trump, or you encourage President Trump to appoint a Surgeon General. And I think you're making a great point. We had a report that mail is still being received in the United States from Wuhan, China. Now, obviously, that's not as bad as somebody coming here and coughing on you. But is that a concern? And would a Surgeon General, if he was actually appointed, or she, would they maybe stop that type of intercontinental mail service?
Well, it's not about the mail service. There's a protocol that occurs with the Surgeon General and the Public Health Service that's different from a protocol with the military. And I'll give you an example. Years ago, when we had the Ebola epidemic, I met with a person who was the former Assistant Surgeon General of the United States, and I asked her, do I have a public health service system in place? She said, no. Do I have a Surgeon General? I said, no. Do you have a problem if I request on behalf of our military to send 3,000 soldiers overseas to stop the Ebola epidemic? She said, no. So 3,000 brave warriors from the American Army went over to Sierra Leone and Liberia and reconfigured a lot of the assets that we needed in order to stop anybody from coming in here with Ebola. Now, Tony Fauci was not in charge. Obama had no idea of what he was doing, and they said it was not dangerous. The Ebola is far more dangerous than the coronavirus, and in turn, we had to use our military. For the most part, I'm tired of having to use our military to contain an epidemic, and what I need is normally a public health service, which means that they are dedicated to dealing with epidemics. Instead of spending their time on Indian reservations, they come back and they deal with ingress and egress of people coming in and out of the United States. The mail per se is not dangerous. A product is not dangerous. What's transmittable is from an individual to another individual. So I need somebody from the White House who has the legitimacy as a physician, a he or she or whatever, to say, look, this is what we have in place. This is what we're concerned with. We're not really concerned with Israel right now. We're not really concerned with impeachment, which nobody cares about. And you see the congressmen and senators absolutely ignorant and negligent of the fact that we do have a biological problem in the United States. And it shows you how scary it is to have these ineffectual people like Schiff and Schumer and Nancy Pelosi, and they have done nothing but self-aggrandize. So my point as a physician who's in the business of healing is get your act together, people. And we're the United States of America. We're not a third world country.
And Dr. Pieczenik, we will be back in 1 minute. I hope that you can stay with us for one more segment because we would like to get your comment on the impeachment. As I had said previously, this is day 7. President Trump's defense is wrapping up their closing arguments for the president. So I'd love to get your response to that. Lindsey Graham also came forward and said that there will be no witnesses called to the Senate for this trial. So also would like to get comment on that. And again, folks, 877-789-2539. The phone lines are filling up quickly, but there are a couple more that are still open. So if you'd like to call in and ask Dr. Pieczenik as well what he thinks about the impeachment, talk to us about the coronavirus, what your take on all of this would be, we would love to hear from you. This is Savannah Hernandez, joined in studio, or actually, sorry, via Skype by Tom Papert. We're going to be with you for the next 2.5 hours to discuss all of today's breaking news for you. We'll be right back on the other side of this short break.